The backyard barbecue had seemed like a harmless idea when Mom first mentioned it 3 weeks ago. Just a casual Saturday afternoon, she'd said. Some neighbors, a few friends from the country club. Nothing fancy. I should have known better. By the time I arrived at my parents' house in McLean, Virginia, there were at least 40 people in the backyard. White tents. Catered food. A bartender mixing cocktails. Nothing about this was casual. "Sarah." Mom called out, waving me over to a group of well-dressed couples. "Come meet the Hendersons. They just moved in down the street." I'd driven straight from a 14-hour shift at the Pentagon, still wearing my standard work attire. Dark pants, conservative blouse, minimal jewelry. I looked tired because I was tired. The situation in the South China Sea had kept me in the operations center until 3 in the morning. "Sarah works for the government," Mom announced, as if introducing a moderately interesting houseplant. "Oh, how nice," Mrs. Henderson said politely. "What do you do?" This was always the difficult part. "I'm an analyst," I said, which was technically true. I analyze threats to national security on a global scale, but analyst was a word people understood. "Defense Department," Dad added from behind me, managing to make it sound apologetic. "Can't really talk about it. Very hush-hush." He said hush-hush like it was embarrassing. Like I worked in classified intelligence operations out of some character flaw rather than patriotic duty. "That's so interesting," Mr. Henderson said, though his tone suggested it was anything but. "I'm in private equity. We just closed a $2 billion deal last quarter." "Congratulations," I said. The conversation moved on without me. It always did. My parents' social circle consisted of lawyers, executives, entrepreneurs. People who could discuss their work freely, whose success was measurable in dollar amounts and job titles that impressed strangers at cocktail parties. I excused myself and found a quiet spot near the back fence, pulling out my laptop. Not my personal MacBook, but the hardened Panasonic Toughbook that was rated for classified operations and could survive a 3-story drop onto concrete. I logged in using my fingerprint iris scan and a 16-character password that changed every 72 hours. 3 new intelligence briefings since I'd left the Pentagon 2 hours ago. A situation developing in Eastern Europe that would require my attention by Monday morning. A request from SOCOM for cyber support on a hostage rescue operation. Routine assessments from my regional directors in Stuttgart, Tokyo, and Dubai. I was reviewing the European brief when my brother Marcus appeared, beer in hand. "Working at a party?" he asked. "That's rude, Sarah." "Just checking email," I lied. Marcus was 2 years younger than me and worked as a consultant at McKinsey. He made excellent money, traveled constantly, and never missed an opportunity to remind me that his career was going better than mine. "You know, you could probably make twice what you're making now in the private sector," he said, settling into the chair next to me. "Defense contractors are always hiring analysts. Better pay, better hours, actual career advancement." "I'm happy where I am," I said, closing the laptop. "Are you, though?" He gestured at my outfit, my tired face, my government-issue laptop. "You're what, 31? Still living in a 1-bedroom apartment. Still driving that 10-year-old Subaru. Working insane hours for government pay. Mom and Dad worry about you. They don't need to worry. They think you're wasting your potential. I mean, MIT grad, top of your class, master's in computer science, and you're doing what? Pushing papers at some government office that can't even tell us your job title." My actual title was Deputy Director of Operations for U.S. Cyber Command, but he was right. I couldn't tell him that. "It's more than pushing papers," I said quietly. "Sure it is." He drained his beer. "Look, I'm just saying you had options. You chose the one that pays the least and gets the least recognition. That's fine if you're happy. But you don't look happy, Sarah." He was right about that too. I wasn't happy. Not because of my job, I loved my work. But because conversations like this happened every single time I saw my family. Every holiday, every birthday, every casual barbecue where I had to pretend my career was less important than it was. I was saved from responding by Dad's voice booming across the backyard. "Everyone, can I have your attention for a moment?" The crowd quieted. Dad stood on the patio holding a glass of wine, looking pleased with himself. "I want to take a minute to brag about my kids," he announced. "Marcus just made senior consultant at McKinsey at only 29 years old. We're incredibly proud of him." Marcus smiled and waved as people applauded. And my daughter Sarah works for the government in some capacity we're not allowed to discuss, Dad continued, and there was scattered polite applause. Some low-level agency position, I think. She can't even tell us what she does exactly, which is, well, it's very mysterious. He laughed. Other people laughed. I felt my face flush. But we love them both very much, Dad finished, raising his glass. To Marcus and Sarah. To Marcus and Sarah, the crowd echoed. I opened my laptop again, needing something to focus on besides the humiliation. The secure email system loaded, showing a new priority message from Admiral Richardson, commander of U.S. Cyber Command. Subject: Urgent Russian intrusion detected. Classification: Top secret ///// no foreign. I felt my entire body tense. This was the alert we'd been dreading for months. The message was brief. Russian intelligence services had penetrated the Department of Energy's nuclear security networks. They were inside the systems that monitored the nation's nuclear stockpile. This wasn't a probe or a test. This was a direct attack on strategic weapons infrastructure. My phone buzzed. A text from Richardson: Need you at the Pentagon now. Bringing this to the Joint Chiefs in 30 minutes. I stood up, already calculating travel time. 20 minutes to the Pentagon if traffic was light. I could make it. Sarah, where are you going? Mom asked, intercepting me near the gate. I have to go to work, I said. Now. It's Saturday afternoon. It's urgent. Everything is always urgent with you, she said, and there was real frustration in her voice. Can't you ever just take a day off and be normal? This isn't something that can wait, I said, pulling out my keys. What could possibly be so urgent that you have to leave your father's barbecue? She looked at me like I was being deliberately difficult. You're an analyst, Sarah. Can't someone else analyze things for a few hours? I wanted to tell her. God, I wanted to tell her that I wasn't just an analyst, that I was responsible for defending the entire nation's cyber infrastructure, that Russian intelligence services were currently inside our nuclear security networks, and I was one of maybe 15 people in the world who could coordinate the response. But I couldn't tell her any of that. I'm sorry, I said instead. I really have to go. I was halfway to my car when Dad caught up with me. This is embarrassing, Sarah, he said bluntly. We have guests. Important people. And you're just leaving. There's an emergency at work. There's always an emergency, he said. Or so you claim. You know what I think? I think you use work as an excuse to avoid family events. You've never liked these gatherings, so you make up some crisis and disappear. I'm not making anything up, I said, frustrated now. This is real. This is important. More important than family? Right now. Yes. His face hardened. You know what your problem is. You have no sense of proportion. You take this little government job so seriously, like you're saving the world or something. It's just a job, Sarah. It's not your whole life. My phone buzzed again. Richardson, Russians are moving deeper. Need your assessment ASAP. I have to go, I said, getting into my car. We'll talk about this later, Dad said. Your mother is very upset. I drove away before he could say anything else, already calling my operations center on the secure line. This is Vanguard, I said, using my operational call sign. I'm en route. ETA 15 minutes. Get the watch team spun up. I want a full briefing package ready when I arrive. Copy that, ma'am, the duty officer responded. Admiral Richardson is already in the operations center. The Joint Chiefs have been notified. This is going to the President. 15 minutes later, I was through Pentagon security and heading toward the secure facility that housed U.S. Cyber Command. The corridors were mostly empty on a Saturday afternoon, but the operations center was fully staffed. It always was. Admiral Richardson met me at the entrance. He was a career Navy officer, 3 stars, and one of the smartest people I'd ever worked with. Sarah, thank God, he said. It's bad. They're in deep and they know we know. They're actively trying to map our nuclear command and control architecture. I followed him into the operations center, logging into my workstation. The threat display showed the Russian intrusion in real time, a sprawling network of compromised systems, all connected to the Department of Energy's most sensitive databases. How did they get in? I asked, pulling up the forensic data. Spearphishing campaign 3 months ago, my lead analyst said. They've been moving laterally through the network ever since, staying just below our detection thresholds. We only caught them because they got greedy and started pulling too much data. I scanned the attack vectors, the malware signatures, the command and control infrastructure. This was sophisticated, state-sponsored, and terrifyingly effective. Admiral, we need to brief the Joint Chiefs immediately, I said. And we need authorization to execute defensive countermeasures. Already scheduled, he said. Video conference in 10 minutes. I want you presenting the technical assessment. I had just enough time to prepare a briefing before the secure video system connected to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. 6 faces appeared on screen. The chairman and the chiefs of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Space Force. The most senior military officers in the United States. Gentlemen, Admiral Richardson began. We have a significant situation. Russian intelligence services have penetrated Department of Energy nuclear security networks. I'll let Deputy Director Chen brief you on the technical details. I pulled up my presentation. Sir, at approximately 1400 hours today, we detected unusual data exfiltration from DOE nuclear security systems. Forensic analysis indicates Russian SVR operatives have had persistent access for approximately 90 days. 90 days, the chairman interrupted. They've been inside for 3 months and we're just finding out now? Yes, sir, I said. They used advanced techniques to evade our detection systems. The good news is they haven't reached the most critical systems yet. The bad news is they're actively working toward them. What can they access? The Air Force chief asked. Currently, nuclear inventory data, facility security protocols, personnel information. If they reach their apparent objective, they could access nuclear command and control authentication systems. The room went silent. Jesus, someone muttered. Deputy Director Chen, the chairman said. What's your recommendation? Sir, I recommend immediate authorization for active cyber defensive operations. We need to kick them out of the network and disrupt their command infrastructure. If we don't act in the next few hours, they may reach systems that could compromise our nuclear deterrent. Active operations means offensive operations, the Navy chief said. We'd be striking back at Russian networks. That's escalatory. Letting them compromise our nuclear command and control is more escalatory, I replied. Sir, with respect, we're past the point of passive defense. We need to hit them hard enough that they know we're serious. The chairman looked at Admiral Richardson. Admiral, your assessment? I agree with Deputy Director Chen, Richardson said. This is what we've built Cyber Command for. We have the capability. We need the authority. I'll take this to the President, the chairman said. Stand by. The video conference went on hold. I looked at the clock. It was 4:47 p.m. My parents' barbecue was probably still going. People were probably asking where I went. Dad was probably making excuses for me. And I was in the Pentagon waiting for authorization to launch a cyber attack against Russia. My personal phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Mom says you left. Really classy, sis. I put the phone away. 23 minutes later, the video conference reconnected. The chairman's face was grim. Deputy Director Chen, you have presidential authorization to execute defensive cyber operations against the Russian intrusion. Rules of engagement are in your briefing packet. The president wants this resolved before it hits the media. Yes, sir, I said. We'll get it done. The video conference ended. I turned to my team, 18 of the best cyber warfare specialists in the world, sitting at workstations throughout the operations center. You heard the chairman, I said. We have authorization. Execute Protocol Cobra. I want those Russians out of our network within the hour, and I want their command infrastructure degraded enough that they think twice before trying this again. Yes, ma'am, my lead operator said, fingers already flying across his keyboard. I pulled up my own console and started coordinating the operation. We had assets positioned around the world for exactly this scenario. Teams in Germany, Japan, the UK, and 3 locations in the continental United States. All of them were ready to execute. Initiating first phase, someone called out. Isolating compromised systems. Second phase ready, another voice said. Preparing counter-intrusion vectors. I watched the operation unfold across multiple screens. It was like conducting an orchestra, but instead of musicians, I was coordinating hackers, analysts, and network specialists executing a carefully choreographed assault on Russian cyber infrastructure. 37 minutes into the operation, my phone rang. My personal phone, not the secure one. I almost didn't answer, but I saw it was Mom. Sarah, where are you? She asked, her voice tight. I'm at work, Mom. I told you I had an emergency. The neighbors are asking questions. They want to know why you left so abruptly. Your father is furious. I can't explain right now, I said, watching as my team successfully ejected the Russian operatives from the first set of compromised systems. I'm in the middle of something important. Everything is always important with you, Mom said, and now she sounded close to tears. Nothing is ever as important as your family. Do you even care what we think anymore? On my main screen, the operation was entering its final phase. We'd kicked the Russians out of our networks and were now systematically dismantling their command infrastructure. It was working perfectly. Mom, I need to go, I said. Of course you do, she said bitterly. You always need to go. She hung up before I could respond. Ma'am, my lead analyst called out. We've successfully removed all Russian access. They're completely dark, attempting to execute countermeasures against our counter-intrusion efforts, but they're failing. Good, I said, refocusing on the mission. Push forward. I want their command servers offline. 17 minutes later it was done. The Russian intrusion had been completely eliminated from our networks. Their command infrastructure had been degraded by approximately 60%. And we'd left behind a very clear message in their systems. A digital signature that they would recognize, letting them know exactly who had hit them. Mission accomplished, Admiral Richardson said, reviewing the results. Outstanding work, Sarah. You just prevented what could have been the most significant compromise of U.S. nuclear security in history. Team effort, sir, I said, exhausted. Your team, he pointed out. Your plan. Your execution. I'm putting you in for a commendation. Thank you, sir. I didn't leave the Pentagon until almost midnight. The debriefings had taken hours, and then there was the after-action report to write, and the coordination with the Department of Energy to ensure their networks were properly secured. By the time I drove back to my apartment in Arlington, I had 37 missed calls and 53 text messages from family members. The texts ranged from concerned to angry to baffled. Call me immediately. Dad, this is unacceptable behavior. Marcus, what the hell is going on with you? Aunt Jennifer, your mother says you walked out of the barbecue. That's not like you. Cousin Mike, everything okay? I sat in my car in the parking garage, too tired to deal with any of it. But I knew I had to call them back eventually. I tried Mom first. She answered on the second ring. Sarah. Finally. Hi, Mom. I'm sorry I left earlier. Something came up at work. Something always comes up at work, she said. Do you know how embarrassing it was trying to explain to our guests why you disappeared? What did you tell them? That you had some minor emergency at your government job. Some paperwork crisis or something. I tried to make it sound important, but honestly, Sarah, how important can it be? I wanted to laugh. A paperwork crisis. That's what she told the neighbors. That I'd left to deal with paperwork while I was actually coordinating a cyber attack against Russian intelligence services. It was more serious than paperwork, I said carefully. I'm sure it felt serious to you, Mom said, her tone patronizing. But you have to understand how it looked from our perspective. We're hosting this nice event, introducing you to successful people, and you can't even stay for a few hours. It makes us look bad. It makes you look unstable. I'm not unstable, Mom. I'm doing my job. A job that apparently requires you to work every weekend, miss every family event, and maintain this ridiculous level of secrecy. Sarah, normal people don't live like this. Normal people have work-life balance. My work isn't normal, I said, the frustration finally breaking through. It's not a 9-to-5 office job. It's not something I can just walk away from when it's inconvenient. Because you're an analyst, Dad's voice said. He'd picked up the other extension. An analyst who acts like she's running the CIA or something. It's absurd, Sarah. You're not that important. The secure phone in my bag buzzed. A message from Admiral Richardson. President was briefed on today's operation. He specifically asked me to pass along his thanks to you personally. Outstanding work. The President of the United States had personally thanked me. And my parents thought I was an overdramatic analyst having a paperwork crisis. I need to go, I said. It's late. We're not done with this conversation, Dad said. We need to talk about your priorities. My priority is my job, I said. And I'm good at it. Really good at it. I'm sorry if that's inconvenient for your social calendar. I hung up before either of them could respond. It was petty and I'd probably regret it in the morning, but I was too tired to care. I went upstairs to my apartment, the one-bedroom place in Arlington that my family considered evidence of my professional failure. What they didn't know was that it was in a building specifically designated for senior intelligence officials, with security features that cost more than most people's houses. I'd barely gotten my shoes off when someone knocked on my door. I checked the security camera and saw Marcus standing in the hallway. "What are you doing here?" I asked, opening the door. "We need to talk," he said, pushing past me into the apartment. "It's midnight, Marcus." "I don't care." He turned to face me and he looked genuinely upset. "What's going on with you?" "Mom and Dad are worried." "I'm worried. You're acting like some kind of secret agent, disappearing at random times, working insane hours, never talking about your job. It's weird, Sarah." "I'm not acting like anything," I said. "I'm just doing my job." "Which is what, exactly?" "Because nobody believes the analyst thing anymore." "You don't act like an analyst. You act like someone with serious authority. The way you talk, the way you carry yourself, even the way you dress. That's not low-level government employee behavior." I was too tired for this conversation. Too tired to maintain the cover story. Too tired to pretend my work wasn't important. "Marcus, I can't talk about my job. I've told you this 100 times. Can't or won't. Both." "That's not good enough," he said. "Not anymore. Mom and Dad deserve better than vague non-answers. I deserve better than that. We're your family. And because you're my family, I'm trying to protect you," I said, my voice rising. "You think I maintain operational security because I enjoy being mysterious? I do it because the less you know, the safer you are." "Safer from what?" "From being targeted by foreign intelligence services." I shouted and immediately regretted it. Marcus stared at me. "What?" "Nothing." "Forget I said that." "No, explain that." "Targeted by what?" I ran my hands through my hair, trying to think. I was already in violation of security protocols by even having this conversation. But Marcus was my brother and he was standing in my apartment at midnight demanding answers, and I was so damn tired of lying. "Sit down," I said. He sat on my couch looking wary. I pulled out my credentials wallet, the one I carried every day but never showed to family. I flipped it open and showed him the badge inside. Sarah Chin, Deputy Director of Operations, U.S. Cyber Command, Top Secret / Psi Clearance. Marcus looked at the badge. Then at me. Then back at the badge. "This is real?" he asked. "Yes." "You're a Deputy Director?" "Of Operations for Cyber Command, yes. I coordinate all offensive and defensive cyber operations for the U.S. military." "How many people work for you?" "Approximately 2,000, depending on how you count contracted personnel." He was quiet for a long moment, processing. "And today's emergency?" he asked finally. "Russian intelligence services penetrated our nuclear security networks. I coordinated the response. We kicked them out and destroyed their command infrastructure." The president was briefed. "It was a successful operation." Marcus looked like I'd just told him I was from Mars. "Russian intelligence," he repeated. "Yes." "Nuclear security." "Yes." "And you coordinated the defensive cyber operation?" "Yes." He stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the city. "How long have you been doing this?" 9 years total. 5 as Deputy Director. "And you never told us." "I couldn't tell you, Marcus. Everything I do is classified. The operations I coordinate, the threats I deal with, even my job title. It's all top secret. Telling you would be a federal crime." "But we're family." "Which is exactly why I can't tell you," I said, repeating what I'd said to Mom earlier. Family members of senior intelligence officials are prime targets for foreign intelligence services. The Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, they all maintain databases of family relationships. They track you. They look for vulnerabilities. The less you know about my actual work, the less valuable you are as a target. That's insane. That's reality, I said. This is why I can't come to family barbecues and chat about my day. This is why I can't explain what I do or why I work the hours I work. It's not because I don't trust you. It's because I'm trying to keep you safe. Marcus turned back to me. Does anyone else know? Besides you? Oh. And you can't tell them, Marcus. Not Mom, not Dad, not anyone. I shouldn't have even told you. I'm probably going to get in trouble for this conversation. But today, when you left the barbecue, you were literally going to defend against a Russian cyber attack. Yes. And Mom told the neighbors you had a paperwork crisis. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Yeah. That's what she said. Marcus laughed too, a little hysterically. This is insane. You're important. You're really important. I'm doing my job, I said. No, he gestured helplessly. You're defending the country. You're fighting Russians. You're briefing the president. And Mom and Dad think you're some low-level analyst wasting your potential. It's better that they think that, I said. It's safer. We talked for another hour. I couldn't tell him specific operational details, but I gave him a general sense of what my work involved. The scope of the threats. The scale of the operations. The responsibility that came with the position. I need to go, he said finally. I need to process this. You can't tell anyone, Marcus. I'm serious. I know, he said. But you need to understand, Mom and Dad, they don't know they're being assholes. They think you're underachieving. If they knew the truth. They can't know the truth, I interrupted. Not ever. This conversation never happened. You never saw my credentials. You know nothing about what I actually do. Understood? He nodded reluctantly. Understood. After he left, I sat alone in my apartment, wondering if I'd just made a terrible mistake. Telling Marcus had felt necessary in the moment, but it was a security violation. One I couldn't take back. My secure phone buzzed again. Another message from Admiral Richardson. Joint Chiefs want to brief Congress on today's operation. Going to need you to testify in closed session. Monday morning. Prepare accordingly. I sighed and opened my laptop. Looked like I wouldn't be sleeping much this weekend. But at least one person in my family finally understood why. The following Monday, I sat in a secure briefing room in the Capitol building, facing the Senate Intelligence Committee. 15 senators, all with appropriate clearances, all wanting to know exactly how close we'd come to catastrophe over the weekend. I walked them through the operation step by step. The initial detection. The forensic analysis. The authorization process. The execution of defensive countermeasures. The successful conclusion. Deputy Director Chin, the committee chairman, said when I finished. On behalf of the committee, I want to thank you for your service. What you and your team accomplished this weekend was nothing short of extraordinary. Thank you, sir, I said. Just doing our job. A job most Americans don't even know exists, he replied. But one that's absolutely vital to national security. The hearing lasted 3 hours. When it was over, Admiral Richardson was waiting outside. The Secretary of Defense wants to see you, he said. Tomorrow morning. Something about a promotion. I blinked. Sir. Director of Operations is retiring next month, he said. Word is you're being considered to replace him. That would make you one of the youngest 3-stars in Cyber Command history. 3-star General. Director of Operations instead of Deputy Director. Even more responsibility. Even less ability to explain my work to my family. I'll think about it, sir, I said. Think fast, he said. The world isn't getting any safer. That evening I had dinner with Marcus at a restaurant in Georgetown. He'd asked me to meet him, said it was important. I've been thinking about our conversation, he said after we ordered. About why you keep your work secret. Good, I said. Because that conversation never happened, remember? I know. But I wanted to say I get it now. I understand why you can't talk about it. And I'm sorry for giving you shit about your career all these years. It's okay. No, it's not, he said. I've been a terrible brother. We all have. Treating you like you're failing when you're actually... He lowered his voice. When you're actually one of the most important people in government. I wouldn't go that far, I said. I would, he said. And I think Mom and Dad need to know something. Not the specifics, but something. They're worried about you. They think you're isolated and unhappy and wasting your life. I can't tell them what I told you, I said firmly. I know. But maybe there's a way to help them understand that you're successful without revealing classified information. Maybe if they just knew you had a senior position. That's still classified, Marcus. Then what do we do? He asked. Just let them keep thinking you're a failure. I didn't have a good answer to that. 2 weeks later, the situation resolved itself in a way I never expected. Mom and Dad were watching the evening news when a segment came on about Cyber Command's recent operations. The report was carefully sanitized. No specific operational details, no classified information. Just a general overview of the Russian cyber threat and how U.S. Cyber Command had successfully defended against it. The segment included an interview with Admiral Richardson. And in the background, visible for approximately 3 seconds, was me, sitting at a workstation in the operations center, clearly in a position of authority. Dad called me immediately. "Sarah, we just saw you on the news." "Did you?" I asked carefully. "You were in some kind of command center. With Admiral Richardson. Do you work for him?" "I work in Cyber Command, Dad." "I've told you that. But you looked like you were in charge of something. You weren't just analyzing data. You were running an operation." "I can't discuss the specifics of my work," I said. "You know that." There was a long pause. "Sarah," Mom said. She'd picked up the other extension. "Are you actually important?" I almost laughed at the phrasing. "I do important work, yes." "How important?" "I can't quantify that, Mom." "Try," Dad said. "Because we've been telling people you do data analysis and now we're wondering if we've been underselling you." "You could say that," I admitted. Another pause. "The Admiral on TV," Mom said slowly. "He's your boss." "He's my direct supervisor, yes." "And you work in, what did they call it? The operations center." "Yes." "Doing what exactly?" "Coordinating defensive cyber operations for the United States military," I said, figuring that much was public record. "I can't be more specific than that." I could practically hear their minds racing, recalculating everything they thought they knew about my career. "Sarah," Dad said finally. "How senior is your position?" "Senior enough that I can't discuss it with people who don't have clearances," I said. "Which includes you." "But more senior than we thought." "Yes." "Significantly more senior?" "Stat. Significantly more senior." Mom made a small noise that might have been a gasp or a laugh. "Oh my God. When we were telling people you did low-level analysis work." "You weren't wrong exactly," I said. "I do analyze things. Just at a higher level than you realized." "How high?" Dad asked. "High enough that Russian intelligence services are very interested in what I do," I said. "Which is why I don't discuss it with family. To keep you safe." There was a very long silence. "We need to talk," Mom said finally. "Can you come to dinner this weekend? We'll keep it small. Just the 4 of us." "I can try," I said. "Assuming no national security emergencies." "Of course," Dad said, and his tone was completely different now. Respectful. Almost deferential. "We understand if you have to cancel. For work." After I hung up, I sat in my apartment and smiled. It had taken 9 years, but my parents finally understood that I wasn't wasting my potential. That my job mattered. That the long hours and the secrecy and the missed family events were because I was doing something vital. They still didn't know I was about to be promoted to 3-star general. They still didn't know the full scope of my responsibilities. They probably never would. But they knew enough. And for now, that was all I needed.